Hey everyone, welcome to this walkthrough of the build for Midcentury Modular Strata. So one thing I really like about Midcentury Modular's modules is that they are really well laid out. As you can see, everything is clearly marked, everything's spaced out very nicely. It's very clear where all of the components go. It's just organized in a really logical and clean way. I really appreciate that. So there are 3 boards for this. We're going to start with board C, and we're going to start with the resistors. There's only 15K resistors on this board. These are pretty straightforward. What I also like about these modules and just the way this whole Midcentury does all of their builds is the build guide is extremely clear, and you'll notice when I bring it up here in a second that the order in which you solder everything is just all right on the build guide. So we just did 15K resistors. Now we're going to do some diodes, and you saw that list there. That's for board C. It breaks out the components that are in each of the boards, and you can just go right down that list, and that's the order you want to solder them in. In general, you always go from the shortest to the tallest. Makes it easier, and that's the way he organized it on the build guide. So, I mean, these are some of the best explained and best organized modules that I've put together. So these diodes, you just want to be careful. The orientation does matter. Again, on the PCB, there'll be a line, and the diode has a top that's black. It kind of looks like a Duracell battery, and you just want to make sure that they line up. Okay, that's where we are now. Next up are the capacitors, or the IC sockets, sorry. These, again, I've explained this in other videos. You always want to solder one pin and then check it to make sure it's flush with the board. If it's not flush with the board, then it's easy to just heat up that one pin and push it down. But generally, I find that if you put some fresh solder on one of those pins and then hold the board down, release the soldering iron while you're still holding it down, they will almost always come out flush, especially if you haven't done any components that are taller than them yet. Okay, so now we're on to the capacitors. These, again, super easy because it's just all laid out really well. This is a very narrow module, so you can see I'm using some helping hands just to kind of keep it from tipping over, but you don't need those. Now the next set of capacitors are the 100 NF 104 capacitors. Now this, I'm going to slow it down for a second. So I sourced these parts myself. This did not come from a kit. And I'm not sure if the ones in the kit would be spaced better, but mine, you can see right there, are just, the spacing is too wide. So rather than order some new ones, I decided just to kind of bend them in like this. I have a whole bunch of these capacitors, so I wanted to use them up as opposed to just ordering new ones with a shorter spacing. But as long as they're not too tall, because you are going to be putting a board on top of it, it doesn't really matter. And these fit in just fine. All right. Now these are electrolytic capacitors. Again, I source these myself, and if you are sourcing them yourself, you just want to make sure that you get them. They have to be shorter than, I think, 11 millimeters. It says it on the build guide in the build materials. And that's, again, because we're going to be putting another board on top of this one. So they have to be short enough not to interfere with the board. All right, we got a shrouded header. This goes on the back. Orientation matters, but it again is very, very, very clearly marked. Now, after I do this, I'm going to wait to put on the in the IC chips until later. It doesn't really matter if you wanted to put them on, you could, but I'm going to go ahead and wait. So that is board C. Okay, this is board B. As you can see, very clearly laid out. There's nothing on the back. It's all pretty much resistors, some IC sockets, and a couple of capacitors. All right, so we're just going to go down through and put all of our resistors in. I did these a little bit out of order because it's just, I happen to grab, I think the next ones I do are the 100K as opposed to the 24K. But it doesn't matter as long as you just do all of the resistors first. And again, the reason for that is because the way they sit on the board is shorter than the capacitors. And if you were to do the capacitors or IC sockets first, it would make putting on these resistors more challenging. All right, more resistors. And we have the last couple of resistors right here, the 24K, and then we can move on. Okay, next up, again, IC sockets. Those come right before the capacitors because they're slightly shorter. Again, you can see that I solder one pin, hold it down, lift up the iron, and that usually keeps it in place. Then you can just kind of pound out all the other pins. Super easy. This is a great build. I'd probably put its difficulty level at a 2 or 3. This one would be an awesome one if you're just getting started and want something to build up your confidence. It's got a lot of really common components, but nothing really complicated. But you have IC sockets, you got capacitors, you have resistors, you have LEDs and jacks, some headers. So it kind of gives you just kind of a crash course in everything that you'll see over and over and over again. There aren't any pots, but still it'd be a great project for someone who's, maybe you've done a multiple or something and you want to just do something a little bit more complicated. All right, so at this point, I kind of deviate from the build guide a little bit, and I just wanted to try to put in these headers to see if I could connect the modules. So you have the female and male headers. I think if you buy the kit, they'll probably come pre-sized, but mine didn't come pre-sized, so they come in these long, a long length, and you got to break them or cut them to size. Now what you're going to want to do, there's also the spacer that comes with it, and you want to screw that in just so that they're attached together when you solder it. That way you know everything will line up perfectly. Now, especially the female header, you can do similar to how you do the IC sockets, where you solder one pin and then you can check the rest. But the male header, you want to do that as well. It's just a little bit easier with the female header. Yeah, so at this point, everything should line up and we can move on to board A. This is going to be the topmost board, the one right below the panel. You can see that's where the jacks go in. And again, you do it in the same order. We'll start with our resistors. Few more here. These are also pretty common values of resistors, so this module might be even a good one for you if you wanted to try sourcing your own parts. Because that's another challenge that with module building is just figuring out what parts you need. And this one, all of the parts are just you can find them in all kinds of different places. It's easy to figure out. There's nothing too obscure or anything like that. Or you can just grab a kit. You save a little bit of money if you buy the parts yourself, especially if you buy parts for multiple builds at the same time. That way you can save on shipping costs, but unless you're planning on building a lot of modules, it doesn't really make that much difference. Okay, so at this point, I decided to go back and do the IC chips. There's no real reason for doing it at this point. I just kind of thought it would make sense, and they were right there, so I just grabbed them. But at these final stages, you just got to make sure everything fits in. Make sure the orientations match up on the IC chips. That's really important. So now I am going to take board A and board B and do the same thing that I did before. I took board C off of it. I separated it from board B just because I thought it would be easier to do it if, I don't know, if they were just two at a time. This probably wasn't the most efficient way to build it because I was putting things together and taking them apart, putting them together and taking them apart. But I felt like this made it easier, and I was more interested in making it easy and fun than fast. So again, just make sure everything lines up. And just go down the line. This is super easy, especially since they are attached using those screws and spacers. There you go. Now you do have to kind of take everything off again, but that's okay. So let's do our jacks and LEDs. Now, I've said this again in other videos. So the LEDs, make sure that the long leg goes in the plus side. That's important. And then you're going to want to put on the panel, attach the screws for at least a couple of jacks. And the first thing I'm going to do is solder all the jacks. So now the panel is attached super solid to the board. And what you can do then is make sure that the LEDs are pushing through the holes. And so once that happens, I did use helping hands because if you push the board down to the table, it pushes the lights up. So I thought it was really helpful just to have these helping hands, but you can figure it out. And there you go. So that part's all done. I had to take the panel off just to get the spacer on. But yeah, it's just, you got to put these spacers on and then put the nuts on the jacks, and then you're good to go. And that is what the finished module looks like. Very easy build. It's a really great module. Definitely check out Midcentury Modular's website for kits or the PCB and panel sets. Thanks so much for watching.